What's up YouTube? Welcome to the Acura Audio Garage. Today I'm finally going to show you how to install a double DIN in your tech package equipped Acura TSX. So this car has navigation. I'm going to show you how to get this working, all your speakers working, keep your factory climate controls and your factory backup camera. All of that's going to be covered in this video, so let's get to it. Alright, so our climate control information is up there. If I hit mode, it switches through the modes. If I bring the temperature down, it brings the temps down, up, hit dual, etc. It's working as it's supposed to. Our steering wheel controls work how they will. Our ELS amplifier interface is working. The only other thing that you may be concerned about is the backup camera. So when I go in reverse, the backup camera will auto show up, and it's not the greatest quality camera from the factory, so it doesn't look the best, but you can clearly see what's behind you and you can use it. If you want a better backup camera, we sell backup cameras. You can use the backup camera that you buy online, whatever you want, but the OEM backup camera you can retain. So before I continue with the video, I just want to share two things with you. The first is that this customer chose to have the Android screen for their final installation instead of a traditional double DIN. So you won't get to see exactly what a double DIN looks like installed in your ELS. You see the Frankenstein version, and I show you how everything connects and how it all works so you can complete the installation. And then I'll throw some still images of other customers who completed the installation so you can see what it looks like. Ultimately, it's going to look like you downgraded to a base model, but you'll get to keep all your speakers, you'll get to keep your backup camera, factory amplifier, subwoofer, all of that. So that's one of the things I want to share with you. The other thing before I continue any further in the video is to make sure you get your radio codes. So the radio codes, you can find them in your glove box. I'll put the website here where you can look them up, or they're in your owner's manual. So you want to make sure you find those, because if you're trying to change something out, you're going to upgrade something, it doesn't work out, you want to put your factory stuff back, you're not going to be able to unless you have those codes. Sorry, let me continue with the video. Radio and your navigation code are going to be in your glove box in this, or sometimes they're right there. You see those stickers? Those are my codes. It's hard to see because of the light, but I'm going to show you here. Go in here, one of these books, I think this one right here, it's my maintenance journal. Yep. And usually right in the front of your maintenance journal are your codes. So it says Navi stock code and audio code. Those are the codes you're gonna need if you start unplugging stuff and plugging stuff back in. To install this double DIN, it's gonna get complex fast. And when I say double DIN, I mean a touchscreen that's 7 inches or more. You can put a floating screen here that fits into this dash kit. There's a traditional double DIN or single DIN or aftermarket stereo going into your factory audio system. It is not an Android screen, it's a full aftermarket radio, as you can see here. This is a Pioneer, but other brands will work. So first, let's cover the tools you're going to need for the disassembly to get all the factory components out. You're going to need a trim removal tool, specifically to remove this trim in the car. You need an 8mm socket with an extension to get those deep bolts that are for the factory radio. Then you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, something with a good point, so that you really can turn those screws and not strip them. And then I recommend a magnetic pickup tool to pick up any screws that fall. You're going to be dealing mostly with Phillips head screws and an 8mm bolt that's also a Phillips screw. So just be prepared with a good screwdriver and magnetic pickup tool so you don't lose any of those. So those covers the tools. Now let's talk about the parts you're going to need. And there are a lot of parts. So first of all, you're going to need to either hit to your junkyard or eBay or the dealer and pick up the audio HVAC display. That's what this is called. It's the audio HVAC display. This shows the climate and audio information on a base model. Here's your part number. Let me see if I can get you a better part number. No. I'll also throw the part number in the description and links to eBay in the description or the comments of this YouTube video, so check there. So this is the first thing you're going to need. Then this is optional, but I do recommend it. It's picking up a base model pocket. So this is what holds your audio unit or your navigation audio unit. Normally it goes in the place of this, so you'll gain yourself some storage and grab this pocket. I doubt this will show you the part number, but I will find the part number and I'll put it down in the description. So those are two things you're going to need to pick up from either eBay or the junkyard or the dealership. The other two, well, the other 3 or 4 things you can either get from us, you can make them by yourself, or try to piece them somewhere else on the internet. So we have the climate conversion harness. So this allows you to replace the factory navigation screen with the audio HVAC screen and allow the climate information to now show up on this screen. Then we have the backup camera retention harness. So this allows you to keep the factory OEM camera and allow it to show up on your new aftermarket radio. And of course, you're gonna need your dash kit. Along with your dash kit, you can get one of our plug and play harnesses that comes with the ELS amplifier module. You want this because this is what's going to allow you to control the factory amplifier. Without this, you won't be able to get to full volume. So you want to make sure you pick up at least a plug and play harness with the ELS amplifier interface from us. And then the last thing is you're going to want the AXWC. I'll throw a picture on the screen. I don't have one right now for this video. I do have one for my A-roll footage, so I'll show you that with me installing. And then last, you're going to want an aftermarket radio that has at least 6 RCA outs. So 2 for front, 2 for rear, 2 for sub, and then obviously one that has a backup camera input. All of them are going to have backup camera inputs usually, but you just want to be aware of that. If you're wondering what radio exactly this is a Pioneer 1700 NEX, and then the dash kit, the actual model number is the 997808B. Something I will mention is the harness changes from 2009 to 2010. They get a certain harness. 11, 12, 13, 14 get a different harness, so you want to watch out for that. All right, let's move on to the actual disassembly and installation. All right, guys, so after you pop this side loose, there's an edge right here you can use to pop the top panel off. And you're just going to use a little bit of force, but you see it's coming out. And then you're going to keep coming up that edge. Edge is up. We're just going to come under the shifter and use that to pop that edge. And then, come on, pop up there. After you pop this out, there's 2 connectors for the seat heaters. And they just have little tabs on them. You'll see that once you get one out, you can kind of spin it like this and get this one out. And here's what I'm talking about. These are the 2 seat heaters that you have to disconnect, and these are all the clips. Again, they're not metal, they're plastic, so it's easy to pop out. It won't break. You just have to be very careful like I was. And then these connectors are pretty easy to get off. You just press and slide down. With that out, we can then pull this screw out, then pull this screw out. So with both those screws now out, it's here and there, you can begin prying this up and out. So just like that, you lift up and towards you. It is going to take some strength, but it will just pop out just like that. And you could set that to the side. The other side is tricky. You don't want to do this first. You want to get this out first. You're just going to come here and pull. Just want to be very careful. You never want to break anything, so you always want to pull with moderate force. Put your back up here. So it's just going to give eventually, like that. There we go. So it's just a bunch of plastic clips, not going to break, but you do want to be careful when you're pulling it. Pull from right here, freeze that up, and now you can, oh, sorry, I forgot. The whole reason why you have to pull this off is because there is a screw here. So far we've taken 3 screws off total, and now we can get this free. With those trim pieces out of the way, we can undo this screw. Lift it up and out. And now I can begin prying on this so that it comes out. This is the hardest part about this, is getting it away from this. And it's just prying real carefully because this will take an imprint. So if you're sitting here and you go like this, you're gonna mark this, and you don't want that. So it's just clips holding it on, honestly. You just kind of have to stick your hand underneath and get it to pop out. Okay. There we go. Let me undo that. And then the vents slide all the way in, so those will be in as well. So now I'm going to disconnect my connectors back here. They're all just pull tabs. There's 3 of them. So there you go. One here, one here, and one here. Now we're gonna pull our display. To get our display out, you need to pry underneath like this, and the clips should release. It's just gonna take a little bit of force. So there we go. And you tilt it forward, it should clear. Slide it this way, and you can disconnect these two connectors. Two pull tabs again. So one, then two, and now my display is free. Pull out our climate control, disconnect it, put that to the side. Now we need to deal with this. In order to get to this drive, you have to pull this pocket out. So this just has one clip. You pull up towards you. Then you have another screw down here. Just another Phillips screw. Gonna remove that. So now we're at a total of 8 screws so far. And now you can unclip this. It is going to be clipped in there pretty good, but it's just gonna take a little bit of force. You can unclip it. Then you have the cigarette lighter. You pinch here in the middle. Let me get you there. So you pinch here in the middle, and that's loose. It does have a, I'm not sure how to explain, like the tab, that whole, the wire that plugs into here is held on by a clip down here. So we need to just press that clip in, and you could do this with the Phillips screwdriver like I just did, and just pressing it in. This is clipped in here so you can pull this out. Okay, now we're up to the big bad boy. This is held in by 4 screws. I'm going to show them to you. They're really in there. So 1, 2, then 3, then 4, deep down in there. So I'm just going to reach in with my long screwdriver. This is why you wanted it to be magnetic. It's barely going to make it, or if not, your really long extension where it's just barely going to reach. Come on. There we go. And now I can begin to get it out. This is exactly why you want a magnetic screwdriver, so that getting to these isn't impossible. Putting these back is very, very annoying. A magnetic bit is going to be your best bet, or a screwdriver that has a magnetic tip. Otherwise, you're just going to keep dropping the screw every time you go to put it in. Alright guys, so when you go to slide this out, you want to be very careful not to scratch this. What you can do is you can make sure your parking brake is up, and then hit the shift lock release. Should be under here. I'm just going to pop this out to get to it. So pop that out. Pop that out real quick. Take your screwdriver. Take your screwdriver, press it in. That lets you move it out of the way. You can put this back now. With that out of the way, we can slide this forward and not worry about scratching anything or anything being in our way. It's going to be tight. And remember, before you disconnect this, you want to make sure you have your radio code. Back here are the connectors I need to disconnect. The only one that might trip you up is this one because of the tab. So you press the tab down, slide this back, and then this comes out. The rest are just have little push tabs that you push down and pull out. So I'm going to remove this altogether. Because we removed our audio unit, the factory audio information will no longer show up. The factory audio will no longer work. If you have a 2011 to 14 and you remove this, your navigation will no longer work either. And if you use the connection to give power to here for your radio, it will no longer work either. You need a T-harness if you want to keep the factory navigation working, and an aftermarket radio if you're going to do a traditional double DIN. There's a lot of caveats to this, so I recommend if you have a specific question about your install to leave a comment down below and ask us the question. We can help you determine what to do. All right, back to our install. I am going to put a little cubby here, the one from the factory that is in a non-navigation model, and then I'm going to slide my radio into place. So when you go to install an aftermarket radio that's going to go in this location, whether it's the Android screen or a traditional double DIN, any screen that's going to go here, you're going to lose your climate information. Your climate information shows up here and sometimes on the navigation, but once this is removed, you'll lose the climate information. For some people, that isn't a big deal, but for others, it's like losing everything. So if you want to keep the climate control information when installing an aftermarket radio, I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to need the audio HVAC display. Here's the part number right on the back. And then this is our harness. The way our harness works is we're going to disconnect this. I'm going to just slide this out, and then we're going to just bring this forward. So we're going to bring that forward, and then just a little bit to the side, which will allow us to disconnect this connector right here. This connector is the one we're after. Okay, so this connection right here, get that out of the way. So this connector right here is the one we're after, and our climate control conversion harness is going to plug in right here to the connector that we removed from the control panel. So with that connected, when I turn my car back on now, my climate control information shows up there, and my radio information shows up there if I'm going to keep the factory radio in place. So if you want to do the Android screen but keep your factory audio info, there's no way to switch it now. So like there's no control panel for you to switch, you know, what you're listening to, but you could keep that information up there. Now we're going to snake this harness up this way and leave it connected so that we can manipulate our climate and install our aftermarket radio here. So when you replace the audio HVAC display, make sure you hook up the harness for the airbag again, and then this is gonna slide in like this, and then just slide up and clip in place just like that, no problem. Now we wanna keep the factory backup camera on our aftermarket radio. That's where this harness comes in. This harness plugs in up here. So that connection used to plug into the factory screen. So it used to go right in there. We're going to take that connection and we're going to plug it into our harness. Now our harness is giving the factory camera power and giving us a video feed to run to our aftermarket radio. We just have to snake it down to its location. So the best place I've found to run the wires is right in this gap right here. If you lift this up, there's enough sunlight up there to run the wires. When you go to install a traditional double DIN in your Acura TSX 2009 to 14, you're going to need the dash kit, the steering wheel controller, the actual stereo you plan to use, and then I recommend getting our harness with the ELS amplifier interface. I also recommend getting the camera retention harness so you can keep the factory backup camera on your new aftermarket radio. I also recommend getting the climate control conversion harness and the climate control display, the audio HVAC display. Alright guys, so I got everything on my dash kit mounted up. My vents, everything's done. And now what I have to do is hook up my volume knob. So I'm going to mount it right here. And what I'm talking about is this part right here. When you buy the ELS amplifier interface, this is your volume control. So I'm going to mount this right here on the face. It's very simple. You pop that off, you unscrew this, you make the hole, and then you screw this through and mount the nut back onto this mechanism. There it is. I've mounted my volume knob. Some of you may think this is ugly or it doesn't look good. If you don't want to mount it on the face of your radio, you can store it in the glove box. I'll talk about use cases at the end. I'm just going to show you how this goes in the car now. First thing is our ELS amplifier interface. So we're going to hook this up. We're going to match these RCAs by the labels. So this is RR, RL. So then if we come in here, we should have, those are subwoofer, here we go, these are my rears, so match those to there. And then here are my fronts, so match my fronts. Then after that, I'm going to add my antenna. And then lastly, my steering wheel control input, which is on a separate, right here, steering wheel control input. I'm going to then, my backup camera harness, looks like this. This is going to go into rear view cam. And then the other thing is for our audio HVAC display, this harness right here, we're just going to undo, and this is going to plug right in here. Then everything else is going to plug into the car. I'll show you where. I have to stop the video real quick. I filmed the camera stuff out of order, so it's going to be a little wacky, so I'm just going to insert it here because it needs to be here in order for you to fully understand how the install goes. So I'm just going to throw it in here, where to wiretap, and how to hook it up. We need to talk about the factory backup camera and the wiring necessary to retain it. So the harness that I showed you earlier already gives you your video feed. So if you hit camera, the feed will come up. But if you put your car in reverse without doing this next step, the screen won't auto switch. So in your TSX, the navigation drive is what receives the reverse signal. In your 2009 and 2010, that navigation drive is in the trunk, so the reverse signal is in the trunk. In your 2011, 12, 13, the reverse signal comes behind the radio, so you can just wiretap a wire behind the radio. Then I'm going to show you how to do the wiretapping at the fuse box, and then if you have a 2011, 12, 13, I'll show you which connector and which pin you have to wiretap and where to connect it on the aftermarket radio. So let me jump into that. Looking for a reverse trigger and you don't want to go all the way to the tail light, or you're going to keep the factory backup camera on an aftermarket radio, you don't want to have to do all that. On the 2009, 2010, there is no reverse trigger behind the radio, so you have to get it from the fuse box. On the 11, 12, 13, 14, it is behind the radio, so you don't have to do this step, but I'll show you which wire you're going to tap. So if you come under here and we go behind, here's a fuse box. If we go behind it, these two junction boxes are hooked up with tape. If you undo the tape, this is the second one. It goes gray, blue, brown. The light blue wire on the blue plug is your reverse trigger, and you can see there's my wire tap. And this is the wire you're gonna have to run from here up to behind the radio. All right, what I'm about to show you is not exactly what is on the back of your car. So you want connector H, it's 28 pins. This is from a TL, but the purpose is the same. You're going to disconnect it from the back of the radio, and then you want to undo some of this tape so that you can do your wire tap cleanly. To undo the tape, you want to find where it ends, or you want to get something to be able to slice it open. You want to be careful, make sure you only cut the tape and not anything else. Otherwise you're going to cut a wire and that's going to ruin your whole day. So once you get some of the tape back, you can actually just peel it away like so and keep peeling. It's just electrical tape, and then you're going to keep peeling back. Eventually you're going to get a good amount of wire to show, and pin 20 is light blue, and that has your reverse trigger. Again, this isn't the connector, so my wire isn't going to match. But let's say pin 20 is over here. This is the wire we're going to tap. This isn't the exact wire you're tapping. This is just demonstration. Remember, yours is light blue, pin 28. Come with your wire stripper. Separate the wires so you expose the copper. Another piece of wire and wrap it around the exposed copper. You can solder here if you want. You can tape or heat shrink, cut and heat shrink. It's up to you. But you want to make sure you get a solid connection around the copper. And then you can add a little bit of electrical tape, and I always like adding a zip tie so that the tape doesn't come out. So just like that, then a little zip tie so that the tape doesn't undo itself. That's how you would tap the wire in 2011, 12, 13, 14. You would run this now up to the screen, and this is what will trigger your radio to auto switch. First things first is, for my backup camera, I'm going to make those connections first. So this is the wire that we ran earlier that we wire tapped. This is going to go to brown, purple, white, orange, white, or pink. Sometimes it's green. It's called back control, reverse camera input, trigger. It's going to have a bunch of different names. Look in the manual of the radio that you bought for which wire it's supposed to be to trigger the radio to go into the view of the backup camera. Then our backup camera, this is our wire we have to connect. So let me take care of that real quick. So this is going to hook up to here. Then we have a bunch of the factory connections to make. So there's 6 plugs from the factory. We're only gonna hook up to 3 of them. So that's super important. There's a bunch of plugs here. We're only gonna use the ones that line up. So this one goes here. Our antenna goes here, and then our primary power plug, hold on, give me 1 second, there we go, is here. So let me just swing this open, come on, okay, slide that in, lock that in place. Now this is our steering wheel control. It says access. This is going to flash a bunch of times and go solid red when it programs. Our ELS amplifier interface is going to flash orange once it begins working. So we're gonna look out for both of those things. I'm just going to slide my radio kind of into place for a test. So there we go. Again, nothing fully solid. We want to watch what these do. So the first thing we're going to do is watch for our steering wheel controls. When we turn the key, this should begin flashing. We're going to hold volume up on the steering wheel. And then it's going to go through a bunch of flashes. And then eventually it's going to go solid red. So it's flashing red. Then it goes solid red. Give it 1 second. There you go, solid red. And now you can see my steering wheel is working. It's making the volume go up. Something to keep in mind, when you do this install, these buttons will work, these buttons will not, these buttons will not. To make these buttons work, you need to remove this shroud and wire tap wires below it with a resistor to make it work. But all right, let's get back to the radio. Let's make sure our amplifier interface is working. So let's put a radio station we know works. And let's bring our volume up. Okay, so our amplifier interface is not working. And this is the exact thing that happens when you don't use it. So the reason it's not working is because it's not hooked up. I did this on purpose. You can see I have the volume maxed out. I'm at volume 50. This is how loud it is in the car. So when you install an aftermarket radio and don't use the right parts, this is the result you're going to have. I'm going to show you now what it looks like and sounds like with our amplifier interface hooked up. So our amplifier interface is flashing, which means it's communicating with the car, but it's set to the lowest setting possible, and that's simply because our control knob is not hooked up. So once I make this connection, I will get full volume. So now I'm going to make this connection, and this will get my volume working the right way. I'm in the gates of hell. Tell the devil he don't own my soul. I'm taking back what the enemy. So that's what our amplifier interface does. It controls the factory amplifier so you can get to full volume. And it does so with the use of this control knob. So right now, my radio's at 25 to 30, right? Remember the volume level you heard before. I'm gonna bring it up now. And that's how this interface works. You do end up with 2 volume controls, but it's easy to just remember, leave this on 37, 40, and use this to control the volume. If you need to bring the volume down, you're driving, you can always come here and bring the volume down. But if you want to bring the volume up, make sure you use this and don't max the radio out, because it could damage your factory amplifier. But now the other thing I want to show you is the factory backup camera working and our climate control information up there. So let me get to that. Our climate control information is up there. If I hit mode, it switches through the modes. If I bring the temperature down, it brings the temps down, up, hit dual, etc. It's working as it's supposed to. Our steering wheel controls work how they will. Our ELS amplifier interface is working. The only other thing that you may be concerned about is the backup camera. So the backup camera will auto show up, and it's not the greatest quality camera from the factory, so it doesn't look the best, but you can clearly see what's behind you and you can use it. If you want a better backup camera, we sell backup cameras. You can use the backup camera that you buy online, whatever you want, but the OEM backup camera you can retain. So I showed you how to properly do the install, plug and play, make it the easiest for you and retain all your factory features. You have to do minimal wiretapping, just that backup camera, if you want it to auto switch. Now I'm going to show you some other methods of installation. So I'm going to show you a different harness, amp bypass, which is really an amp loopback, and a couple other little Frankenstein systems that are possible with your TSX. We don't sell them. We could make them available. I'd like to get your feedback on them. But these are kind of fun little projects that have come up and things we've realized that can be done with the TSX as well. So there is no guide on how to follow for this install stuff. I'm just going to show it to you and make it part of this video because I think it'd be fun for you guys to see. But if you do have questions about this stuff, feel free to leave it down in the comments. All right, what you're about to see, it's only possible if you leave the factory navigation unit in place in a 2011 to 2014. If you have a 2009 or 2010, this is possible while removing the audio unit. Remember, 11 to 14, this combines into one. 9 and 10, it's in the trunk. I showed it to you. So now I'm gonna plug this back up. So now the map is gonna come up. There is no way to control the map or put in the code, and that's the problem. Except that we did think about this a long time ago, and we came up with a solution. So we have an extension harness that plugs into here, and the connector is still back here. So let me just get to it. So it's this green connection right here. So if I plug that in, I snake this down, and then I bring this back to where it's supposed to be. This works. I can move this around. I can control my map. The thing is, I can't go anywhere else. So with that extension, the plan was to allow you to use this. So now this still works. So you can like cut this out and make it work. And what that looks like is something like this. So we're gonna take this out. We're then gonna hook up just a control knob, and this still works. I can still zoom in and out, zoom all the way out, and I can hit and then zoom through this. I just have no back, no menu, none of these buttons to help me navigate, which are really helpful. You can kind of, these are all together, so you can remove it as a unit. We just didn't for this example. The other thing with this setup is that because I eliminated the audio unit, there was some CAN bus communication through it to tell this to go into reverse or to switch the video. Since that communication is gone, it never knows to switch the video. So when you go into reverse, the video doesn't change. This is still hooked up to the reverse trigger, but the camera signal is not coming here anymore. It's going up there. So you can do some wiretapping to make the camera come up here, but I think this isn't something that everyone's gonna want. I don't think this is something everyone's gonna want. It's a very wonky setup. If you want to take video from this screen and duplicate onto this screen, that's also possible, but you need a 2011 to 14 screen. So there's like a bunch of little other things here that we figured out that I haven't shown you on video. I'm gonna show you one last thing actually. All right, so I figured this out a couple weeks ago. This is the display from an ELS. And basically what is going to happen is the harness that we used earlier for the climate conversion. So come on. So this is the audio HVAC harness, remember, to show the climate information up here. We have a different harness that plugs into here. Come on. And then your climate information shows up here. And this is the size of a single DIN. So now, let me put this back. This shows the climate, right temperatures, everything. And you could tuck this down here. So again, plus this, you could really have a crazy system of everything. Oh, hold on, I'm still reverse. So now, with all of this together, you could have a crazy system for what you want to do with your factory nav and aftermarket radio and everything. But this is overkill. It's just different. There's different setups that could utilize this stuff. If you have a specific question about what you want to install, reach out to us. We'll help you, guide you through what to do, what to buy, what not to buy. Guys, so here's just a regular harness. I think you probably find this on Amazon. You can make this yourself. Metro 1729, whatever it turns out to be. You just decide, hey, I'm just gonna plug this in, and That's it. I'm not buying anything from you guys. I don't care what you sell. I'm not using it. That's all I need. I know what I'm doing. Here's what's going to happen. I'll put that in. Gonna turn this on. My navigation will still come up. My radio will turn on. Install it this way. Your volume is gonna get louder, but it's gonna sound distorted and it's gonna not be as loud. You see how it sounds really distorted? That's the issue you run into when you use this harness. And that's why you need the ELS amplifier interface. Or if you're stuck on going this way, this is what you want for whatever reason. We do have an amplifier cutoff for this car. So this plugs in the trunk. I'm going to show you the sound difference now. Now if you're set on that install, you're going to use your own harness. You're going to want to bypass your amp in the trunk so that your aftermarket radio powers your speakers. Now, quick thing, this car has 10 speakers. Your factory amplifier powers all of them. Your aftermarket radio is only going to be able to power 4 speakers. So once we plug this in and bypass our amp, we're only going to have 4 speakers playing. So once we disconnect the connectors from the amp, we can plug this in. So this has a 28-pin connector that'll go right in here, and my other side will plug in there. This bypass is only available with an aftermarket radio. With the factory radio, it's not possible. Also, you can't grab the signal from the factory radio before the amp, but I'll cover that later on. Let me show you this. Our amp is bypassed. We're going to listen to what it sounds like. That's going to cover your double DIN options. I recommend our ELS amplifier interface, but if not, you can use your aftermarket radio to power your factory speakers. It's not going to sound that great, and you're only going to get to keep 4 of them. But hey, if that's the trade-off you're willing to make, then it's worth it. But all right, let me put my car back together, and I'm going to show you what the customer decided to do. So here's the final product. You have your nice 9-inch screen. It is a touch screen. It has CarPlay and Android Auto, so here's Android Auto. And then the factory radio still works like the factory, so if I change my climate, it still shows on here. And then if I raise the volume, it still works.